Morning, Chris. Morning, Jim. We're just gonna give
Morning.
Dave a couple of minutes to join us.
Perfect. You guys have a good weekend?
Yeah.
Yeah, how about you?
How about you? Did the marathon on Saturday. That was fun.
You're so healthy.
Oh my God. My legs are jelly.
I think Dave's in the waiting room.
Yeah, trying to get him to come out.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No worries.
You're good.
Dave. Okay, now we have everybody.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining this morning. July 20th times 9:50, and we'll go ahead and get the finance committee meeting going. And we have all of our committee members here today. So yeah, just to start off with our sales tax report. So in our packet, we have the June sales tax update. And again, just to review, the table outlines our 5% sales tax that we receive, 1% coming from the state, 4% from the county. Just a reminder, as always, there is a 2-month lag in our sales tax reporting. And so our June numbers, so reflecting April, we're down just about 7.5% from 2025. So that puts us at year to date down 2.5% from 2025. I will say we did just get the county numbers for July, and those are up about 3.8%. And then we should have the 1% from the state here shortly. So it does look like we're on track.
Balance out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So any questions or anything to talk through regarding our most recent sales tax numbers?
No. So I'm sorry, did I hear it? It sounds like we will be hitting back, on track where we should be compared to 2025.
Yes. Yeah. So year to date compared to 2025, we're down 2.5%. But the July numbers from the county are strong, and we're just waiting to receive the 1% from the state for July, and would anticipate those being strong as well. So we should be fairly on par with 2025 through our July reports. Right. So if no further questions on sales tax, we can jump into our May financial statements. And, to kick this off, I'd be happy if any committee members have pinpointed any questions or things they'd like to focus on as we review the May 26 financial statements. But otherwise, I thought it might be a helpful exercise just to walk through some of the items in the financial statements to give you a sense of, when we're looking at this, the items that we're honing in on. If that sounds good, we'll just go ahead and dive into that.
Mhm.
All right. So yeah, let's see here. So starting off, just silence that. On page 1, just to start taking a look at in our combined cash accounts. One thing I wanted to highlight, we have our general fund in our Colo Trust and our investment CDs. And one thing as we're heading into budget season that is on my radar to look at and to discuss with the board is just our interest rates, how much we're making off of those accounts. And so our general fund Colo Trust is about 4% return. Our CDs are sitting at 2%. So that might be something we want to look into.
Our
Yeah.
CDs are with Citizens Bank. They really don't
Mhm.
have great return. I know that the only reason why we got CDs with them was to try and just kind of build good faith, but Colo Trust does have a better return.
Let's see here. So
Have we
yeah,
built enough faith?
What's that?
Have we built enough faith?
Yeah, we do have our cash handling account with CSB as well. just so we don't have, because all of the cash that we handle, especially from like the Anisi showers, we didn't want to have to drive back and forth to
Right.
Durango with all that cash. And so, I think that we can continue to keep that account open for obvious reasons, but if we wanted to move the CDs over to Colo Trust so that they would yield a little more, I don't think that that would be, a bad idea. I'm sure CSB would not love to lose that, but I do think that we would probably see better return from Colo Trust.
Or
I'd
could
like to
we ask
explore that if
CS
possible. Oh, sorry. Go.
Oh, no, my bad, but I was just gonna say maybe CSB would revisit their rates there.
Yeah, their rates are, they have expressed that they know that their rates just aren't as competitive. We could, I'm sure, set up a meeting and see if they would be willing to give us better rates before we made that decision, but it is something to think about.
Yeah, I think it's a good conversation to have. And, part of that would certainly be, having funds at a bank where, then community members are, supporting an institution which gives out loans to community members. So yeah, a number of different things for us to talk through, but yeah, I just wanted to flag that as something that, I'd like to discuss as we're, really diving into budget season.
My 2 cents is it doesn't really matter which bank or where you have your money. The bank is a bank. They're not going to hold anything. If we need something from them, and they in the future, and they can come up and help at that time, that's great. But if they can't give you the return that another bank can do, you just move to the different bank.
Well, great. So definitely that'll be a topic of conversation and where we want to, house our funds, because it is, it's a significant amount of money. And, just wanted to flag that as something that we'll be discussing further. All right. So moving on to, page 3, under intergovernmental revenue. Again, just want to highlight some of the things that, staff are keeping an eye out for. So under intergovernmental revenue, under grant revenue, when we have these line items where you can see that we don't have anything budgeted for grant revenue in 2026, but we do have, year-to-date actuals. So those are the items that, we need to do some investigation. You determine if that's a code error, and figure out, if that's, unanticipated revenue or again, just a coding error. I did also want to highlight, this will be another example of this, again, under intergovernmental revenue, local government grants. We were just awarded some tourism board funding for marketing of town facilities. So this would be an example of where we have funding coming in that wasn't budgeted. And so we'll have that to account for. I think when reviewing our financial statements, and this is moving on to page 4 under miscellaneous revenue, it's really helpful, to think about, the seasonality of town's revenue. And this particularly pertains to, our facilities. So, we can see here under miscellaneous revenue, Kendall Mountain Community rentals, we're very much on track as it pertains to the time of year we're in and how much of the fiscal year has elapsed. But you'll see, like, for Anisi Park showers, currently we're at about 10% of our funds that our revenues that were budgeted. And so just looking at the budget or the financial statements with an eye to the seasonality of our revenues, and if we're, at a point in the year, like say towards the end of the summer, where some of these revenues, if they're still lagging behind, right, then we have a better sense of, it's a poor year, rather than we're just at a point where we're not caught up yet.
And I just deposited, couple of $1,000 into the cash handling account that will get coded to NEC showers, and so that number will actually go up. It just needs to get entered into the system. But yeah, there's several more thousand that will get coded there,
Okay.
so it should be a little higher than 10%.
Yeah, and we'll of course expect that to make up ground over the course of the summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the topic of the NEC Park showers, I'm just trying to make sure I'm reading this right. So in all of 2025, it was $990.
Let me flip back to that real quick.
Yes, that's, yeah,
Yes.
$990, but
It didn't start till later in the year or something like that.
yeah, I think so. Started later in the year. And actually, I wonder if maybe some of that cash got coded somewhere else, because I'm pretty sure we collected more than that last year in cash from the showers. So
Because our year to date now is already over that, but you're saying that's just only 10% of what we're budgeting to receive.
yes, and
Right.
that number, that $1,003.95 is not accurate. That because I just deposited a little over 2,000 into the Citizen State Bank account, but that needs to be entered into our accounting system as a cash deposit, which should show up in June. That's one of the things that our accountant should be entering for us. So we're over 10% as of right now, just based on what I know I've deposited into the bank.
Gotcha. And then do we retroactively try to fix any of that accounting if it was coded wrong, or how?
We
So
can't fix it for last year. No, it's too late to fix 2025, but that's fine. As long as it all goes to the right place this year, then it's fine. It may have been entered as like a miscellaneous revenue item for 2025.
And that seems likely, just given that we budgeted 10,000 for this year.
Yeah,
You're making a jump from 900 something to 10,000 is a huge leap. So, yeah. I would imagine that revenues were higher for 2025 and they were coded right under miscellaneous or something
Mhm.
of that nature.
Can I ask about the cell tower lease? See, last year. Okay, it's not budgeted, but we are receiving.
we received, that 15,000 from the cell tower lease was that was a one-time payment from them. I can't remember exactly what it was for, but typically their lease is only about 11,000, not 15. There was some sort of bonus that they.
Okay, and do we know when that gets paid?
I'm not sure. It's usually towards the end of the year, if I remember correctly. I think they usually, it's American Cell Tower Management or something of the sort. They usually reach out in about maybe October or November
Okay,
for their contract renewal. But yeah, their usual renewal is only about 11,000. It's not 15.
okay. One other sort of question about the Kettle Mountain community. There's a significant increase in the budgeted amount for this year compared to previous years. Any idea why that jumped so much?
Because the cost to rent it, we increased significantly.
Okay,
For non-locals anyway. I mean, the local price went up as well, but the non-local a lot.
and is it projected, you think we'll meet that
Yes,
with that with that
because
increase?
this is only projecting through May, and we're already at 41%, where the Kendall is rented every single weekend through September.
Okay,
So that should make up for the rest of the summer.
okay, sounds good.
Another, this is on page 6, under general fund expenditures. One thing I just wanted to highlight, just, for your information, especially for our new committee members, under town board, partner organizations. That's the funding, that we, give San Juan Development Association, our dues for the Region 9 Economic Development District. So yeah, just wanted to, address some of the line items that have a more generic title, and to add some clarity on what those actually are. And in that same vein, on page 7, under General Government Administration, support agreement and professional services, those line items are for, our accounting software, IT support, our municipal account with MuniCode. And we did budget funds to replace the town server this year. And so yeah, those are all captured again in some of the more generic titles. So just wanted to add some clarity in case there were questions about those. And moving on to page 11, under building and code officer, are the last line item, books and periodicals. Again, just to, let you know the kind of things that we're looking at in detail. You can see, it's a line item where we're over budget, and, we are expecting reimbursement from a grant for those periodicals. So, that we flag that for, this is something we need to look into. Is the grant payment delayed? What's the issue there? And jumping a few pages ahead, and yeah, interrupt me at any time for any questions. So it's jumping ahead to page 25 to our conservation trust, our conservation fund. So in case there's anyone that's not as familiar with this revenue source, these are the lottery proceeds that the town receives. These are specifically earmarked for parks, for recreation. And it's my understanding that the town is working toward building these funds back up. We're currently sitting at a bit over 90,000, but building those back up to potentially utilize for, some of our facilities, capital improvements. I also did want to highlight real quick, it's on page 29, our Mullis Lake Park Fund. I spoke with Steve just last week. I think Mullis is now over 240,000 in bookings for the campground, bookings for the year. So tracking very strong at Mullis. Yeah. And this next item, this is page 34, under our water fund. And this is going to tie directly into one of our conversations later in the meeting. But under charges for services, looking at our water fees, those are utility fees, same for sewer, refuse. But we're, town, we currently are, quite behind on some of those payments from our utility users. So we'll dive into the potential need for implementing minimum payments, et cetera. And
Do you guys have any questions about page 33, water fund? Because I know this is something that we've been talking about both in the utility meetings and general meetings. Just putting it out there.
In terms of
If you
the,
guys have any questions.
yeah, so in terms of the, um, the folks who haven't paid specifically, how do
Yeah,
we,
or in general.
yeah, how do you, if they haven't paid, how do we know who has the ability to pay? And if we put a minimum payment in place, that actually does any good?
Yeah, well, and I'll save diving into the weeds on that one until we get to the agenda item, just to keep us moving along, um, but yeah, it's that balance of, right, being, recognizing the composition of our community and what works for our community and keeping our enterprise funds healthy. And yeah, and I know there's been a lot of effort to get our enterprise funds in good standing, which very much hasn't been the case in the somewhat recent past. So yeah, so we'll dive into that here in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, and then, yeah, let's see here. I think just the final thing I wanted to highlight again, just so you're, in tune with what, again, what we're looking at as we work through our actuals. The Still Water Fund, page 35. But as we've been, really pursuing redundancy in our source water and needing support from water attorneys as we're working through, the conversations and the agreements to, bring something to water court for those water right transfers. You can see under the treatment and under other professional, we are, we're over budget we're about 259%. And that's for all those additional legal needs. And so as we're, starting to really think about 2027 budget and looking at the tail end of the 2026 budget, identifying where there were actually greater needs in the 2026 budget and places where in the budget where, we didn't need as much funding, and starting to, think about where we're going to, shift funding between line items to, to account for those overages. And with that, yeah, those were some of the items that, I just wanted to, again, just highlight for everyone for our May financial statements. And June will be coming in very shortly. So we're got a little bit behind during audit season, but we'll be back on track for our financial statements here shortly. But before leaving financial statements, any additional questions or thoughts about May?
Sorry, I might have missed it through there. The transfer, the dump, are we starting to see a realistic climb in revenue collection, or?
Yes. Yeah, we let's see. Let me make sure I'm not speaking right. But we're seeing about $450 a week coming in from having our seasonal attendant there at the transfer station, charging fees for when people are dumping electronics, refrigerators, et cetera. So we are seeing returns on that, having that person in place.
And that's closing the gap on a loss there in terms of what we're paying for that?
Specifically for, are you talking about what we're
You
paying
just
for?
mentioned, sorry, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Oh, no, just asking for some clarity on that question, like in relation to what we're putting into that position versus what we're seeing in return, or?
Yeah.
Yes, so fortunately, that position is fully grant funded. So we're just seeing return, which is wonderful.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, $450 a week is significant considering we were collecting no additional fees before. So
Okay.
anything that he's able to collect is positive.
All right. Do
And
we have a comparison of we have any idea what should be collected versus what we are collecting?
yeah, well, what I can say is now that we have someone there, everything that we should be collecting, we now are
We are
collecting.
collecting.
Whereas before, occasionally, a Bruin employee might collect or note something that was being dumped that needed to be charged for, but that was
Okay.
rare, if ever.
Right, I mean,
So-
before anything that was getting dropped off that wasn't regular trash, so any appliance, any electronic, any tires, any construction waste, they weren't accounted for.
Okay.
So
We
now
have a
all-
sense that all that's being collected right now. Is there
Yes.
any way to confirm that all that's being collected, or like, are there books or anything, or?
Or so like a cataloging
Yeah,
of
how
what's.
do we confirm that
Yeah.
like one vehicle comes in and gets charged, and another vehicle doesn't get charged?
I mean, he's been turning people away on every single Wednesday, so he is collecting everything that needs to be collected.
Okay. All right.
And recognizing window tags and stuff like that, which we pay
Yeah, I
for.
mean, I'm having people come in every single week asking for dump tags, so he is, the function of the position is working.
Okay.
And then Doc, to get back to, I think your original question was a two-parter. One, about a baseline. I don't think there is a baseline to compare the 450 being collected to anything previous because it wasn't being,
Yeah.
it wasn't being tracked. So what we're collecting now and what we're tracking is new to the facility.
Okay. So there's zero, that grant isn't just covering staffing. There is zero out of our fund being spent on items like electronics, tires, and so forth. So there's nothing we have to balance in terms of what's being dropped off that's chargeable versus what we're collecting on. So it's staff and the transfer. Everything is covered by the grant.
Not the transfer, so we're.
That's why we're
yeah.
charging for the items,
Yeah.
so that we.
That's what I'm
can-
getting at. That's what I'm getting at. That's what I
Yeah.
want. I'd like to know, are we collecting enough to pay for the transfer with what we're collecting?
Yes, and I believe was it March? So John took a deep dive into the fee schedule for all those items in addition to the bi-monthly refuse fees. And so, yeah, so John put together, comprehensive suggestion for the board, about what additional items that we would collect at the transfer station and associated fees. So yes, the fees that we are collecting do cover the cost to transfer out.
Okay. All right. That's what I was wondering.
And the seasonal attendant position, just as a reminder, is grant funded for 2 seasons. So Luca will be in place at the transfer station until about end of September this year, and then next year again from May to September, October.
Okay. All right.
Is the plan to hold the Bruin employees more accountable over the winter, or do we kind of just assume that things dropped off in the winter won't get, the fee collection, or what's the plan with that?
Yeah, I think we do have opportunity to address that better with Bruin with, as they're going through some transition with staff. But I think the wall we've been hitting up against, and Melina and John, please feel free to chime in on this, is we can request that the Bruin employees do collect payment. But at the end of the day, there's a bit of, we don't have the strong arm with enforcement since they're not our employees. So that's certainly where a gap has been.
I do think at least in the winter, there won't be construction waste. There are some things that won't be getting dropped off in the winter in general. But I mean, yes, it really just comes down to us having the Bruin employees do what we're asking them to do, which in the past, when JC was out there, he didn't have a problem enforcing our policies at all. He would, he would fill out the forms and he would drop them off once a month and everything was fine. But the last employees, their response was, well, our boss at Bruin didn't tell us that we had to do this, so we're not going to do it. And so it comes down to hopefully having somebody hired out there who is going to cooperate. And if they don't, then, there will just be a loss during the winter and then we'll have to try and make up for it in the summer.
And to make up for it, maybe our fee collections that John worked on there, there's a little bit of cushion or margin, so to speak, in what our actual cost is.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to get those costs and hopefully by the time, like Elizabeth said earlier, when that grant runs out, we're already working on
Right.
another big plan for the town basically to take over
Yeah.
that. And so
That's the ultimate.
there's some light at the end of the tunnel. It's just going to be, I can't do it tomorrow. It'll be,
Sure.
and everything, but
That the ultimate goal would be to just take the transfer station back over and run it ourselves. Which I think we're a lot closer to that reality than we have been in the last 5 years. Because when I started crunching those numbers 4 years ago, it was not even within the realm of possibility.
yeah, we're I'd say within a year and a half,
Yeah.
we should be in control of this. And then that way we regulate it and we're not bleeding money.
Well,
Yeah,
not
and
having,
then
also not having to depend on an outside company to take care of it for us, so.
that would be terrific. Yeah. And then of course, back to the point, then we're going to have a baseline on all those data points after having a year plus of operations there to kind of understand if our fee schedules are enough or if we can sustain that position year round and so on and so forth. So that all sounds awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of positivity surrounding the near future of the transfer station and the refuse fund. So we'll keep working toward those goals.
Are the new employees more amicable to doing what we request?
Yes, I'm out there on Wednesdays and Saturdays just to kind of check in. And those guys that are coming over from Montrose and New Glenada area, they're like, they're all for it. And they actually are going, how come it got to this point? So
Nice to know.
the standards that they're dealing with in other communities, they have no problem. The yard sale is almost non-existent now. So yeah, it's there. I wish we could get a couple of those guys over here full time.
Well, because also I imagine come winter, they're not gonna drive over that pass.
No, and so I know
We're
there's
gonna
a
have
big
to have,
push
gonna
to,
have somebody who lives here.
yeah, so wait and see, but yeah, the ones that are helping out right now are doing a really good job. So
I have a technical question, probably not super on topic, but I have a technical question regarding the refuse dumpsters and our bear situation. Per the contract, which I haven't seen in a while, are we allowed to make modifications to the dumpsters?
can I answer that one?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm gonna be taking the bull by the horns, so to speak, this week. There's a couple easy fixes, which are, in my opinion, not expensive.
Perfect.
And it's putting an anchor in the ground so that the bear cannot tip it over. And this week we will be going, I know there's some of those, I really never liked the little 1/8 inch cable that they put across there. That was a Band-Aid.
Well, it doesn't do it.
And so I'm actually looking at some, what they consider dog chain, the heavier duty. And so my staff will be kind of working on that later this week, going and repairing and making it, although the bear that's frequenting all the dumpsters is a good sized bear.
Yes.
And I'm trying my best on that.
I think there are two. There are two that are,
There's two, but the one is basically staying out at the dump
yeah,
and he's smaller and more skittish. The one in town is like,
he's big. He's a big bear.
I'm here and this is mine. So short answer, Jim, yes, I'm working on it. And it's a low number for some chain and stuff like that. And then I can always approach Chris from Bruin and say, hey, I'll keep a running list in total, and maybe there's something that he'll reimburse us for. I'm not gonna hold my breath on that, but that would be my wish.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and move on to agenda item number 3, the Public Works on-call policy. So I'll let John guide us through this, but we're looking at updating the Public Works on-call policy. And there is a budget impact to that, increase of about $6,000 per year for the Public Works overtime budget. And with that, I'll,
Sure.
yeah.
So I kind of wanted to, coming into this position, you kind of sit back and look at things and kind of gauge and see how things are running and everything. And of course, I guess part of mine was I come from a community and our on-call was a little bit different. And so I'm kind of trying to move away from what we have to a different schedule. And that schedule would be Wednesday to Wednesday. Right now, me, the Public Works Director, I hold the phone Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then hand that phone off on Thursday evenings, whoever is designated on call. Works, it kind of ties me, and I believe there's an opportunity here to do a couple things. One is get a little bit more engagement with the staff as far as switching the schedule up. I would still hold the phone during work hours from basically 6:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. at night, and then hand that phone over to whoever is on call. And like Elizabeth said, there is a little bit of a financial hit because it puts more money in their pocket, the staff who is ever carrying the phone. Right now, we pay 2 hours for holding the phone on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then this would just be an increase of 1 hour of pay on Monday through Thursday. So it benefits the staff, and it frees up and gets that engagement of carrying that phone. And I don't have to. So this is, but going through the numbers, Elizabeth put in there, kind of what our overtime budget was in previous years from 21 to 25. Those are very dependent on what we have for snow in the
Yeah,
wintertime.
You can, 21 and 23 were both big snow years.
Big
So that
snow years.
makes a lot of sense.
It correlates. I don't think with the upcoming budget that I would, there might be a small increase to the overall overtime budget, but not a 6,000 a year increase. I think we can absorb some of that. And on that note, I'm not saying that if we do get a really good snow year, there's a possibility that we go the other direction in it a little bit. But I worked with the other Wednesday to Wednesday call for 20 years. And so it's a really good setup. And it's middle of the week, so you're not at the beginning, you're not at the end when that employee transfers the phone to the next person on call. So we did bring this to the utility committee last week, and everybody seemed to be in favor of it. And, it is a small, well, in my opinion, a smaller financial hit, but it goes back to the staff. And I think that's anytime you can pay staff, it's a good thing. And believe me when I say this, that the phone, as far as after hours calls, is not even comparable to other communities for what we get call wise. So would if anybody has any questions for me, be glad to discuss it more in depth, or yeah.
And I think overtime also, I mean, overtime budget, both in Public Works and Parks and Rec, always gets hit harder in a heavier winter year, and then.
Which makes perfect sense.
Yeah, makes total sense. There's just more to be done.
Yep.
Earlier in the day and later in the day. So it's, it balances out. We have years that are lower and then years that are higher.
Yep.
Guys, real quick, I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. I just had a patient walk in. I need to step out for a couple minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I kind of got my schedule screwed up.
Chris, Jim, any comments?
Chris?
Just clarity there at the end, John, you were saying that our community doesn't compare in those calls as other communities. Were you inferring that we're higher or lower, or sorry for my ignorance there?
We are much lower compared to my other employer, but my other employer also, I mean, that emergency number that we ran down there, we would get calls for irrigation, we would get calls for trash, we would get calls for streetlights that were out, which weren't even the city's responsibility. DMEA. So the overall volume, and again, you look at the size of the community we have here in Silverton and the number of service taps, main line. I mean, in Montrose, I had 600 miles of water main. So a little bit different here, a little less opportunity for issues.
Yeah. Thank you.
As for me, we covered this the other day. I think it's a great policy change, and I like it. I like it a lot. And then I also sent you some photos to your phone directly regarding the dumpsters and what I did at the Grand Imperial.
I'll look at it.
I installed some heavy duty chain. I don't know what else to do.
There are answers, and I just stepping back to that for a second. I think a lot of that is attitude with Bruin and the past two employees, and their give a darn was broken. And it's simple fixes that we can make, which is going to make, I think, is a big difference. So.
Yeah, I like the ideas of anything we can do to fix those. I've myself gone to a horse trailer to kind of borrow Holly's idea there for her business. I've done the same thing because my dumpster was getting beat up so much last year. And then while an adaptation with a chain is probably the easiest and not having to do much fabrication, I just wondered if, and maybe this is a big, no, that wouldn't work, but like a latch with a padlock system for, like my dumpster had 2 doors on it. I know some are bigger and have 4 or whatever, but that would kind of like remove the ability for that door, even under chain or cable or whatever, that can move, 4 inches or whatever. And when they tip it up, they can get their arm in there. I just didn't know if there was any way to just latch them down. But of course, that would take some tabs, some fabrication in the latches. And then, I just kind of spitballing here and didn't know if that would kind of tip it into the realm of, that's a little too much and a little too much fabrication work on somebody else's property. But just something I was thinking about when I think about how, they're probably still able to get that few inches of space there. And I know you were thinking anchoring them down. That totally makes a bunch of sense. If they can't tip the dumpster over, they're not going to be able to get into the trash as much, all that. But just kind of some spitballing ideas there.
And those dumpsters do exist. Those are the kinds of dumpsters that are in national parks, and Bruin does have those dumpsters that have a latch on them, like a bar latch. And last year we asked them if we could replace our dumpsters with those so that they would be more secure. And they said that they weren't confident that their employees could empty them without breaking them. So they told us no, that they wouldn't give us those dumpsters that latch, which is kind of an insane response, but maybe now they would be willing to discuss it again. I don't know. Or just having to work with what we've got.
Yeah, I think I'd really like to go ahead and, just replace some of that cable with some chain. And I think at this point, Bruin's so overwhelmed with not having employees up here.
Yeah.
And I agree with you totally, Chris, as far as I'd love to be able to install latches and stuff like that to make it more bear proof. But I again, with your comment, that's modifying their equipment. And so I'd rather try and come up with an alternative solution to get us through this summer and maybe possibly work throughout the winter, and with their permission to install latches, because that's going to require welding and stuff like that. So great idea. And just another item along with that is the stuff that me and Elizabeth have been working on with this transfer station, all the dumpsters that I've been looking at for this possible takeover. I don't know how else you want to say it. Those are all bear proof with those big latches. Again, we just gotta get there, get to that finish line point.
Great. Well, thanks for the input on the on-call policy, and we'll keep moving that forward. Okay, so our last item for the day is addressing utility bill accounts and potentially looking at implementing minimum payment structure. So currently we have, many multiple accounts that are past due, totaling almost 140,000 in past due funds. So as we understand it, during, I think policies were perhaps relaxed around COVID. And again, Melina, please correct me if I'm saying anything wrong here, but we're operating under the premise that as long as people are paying something toward utility bills.
And during COVID was when they dropped the late fees.
Okay.
They did away with late fees during COVID to give people a little bit of a break. And then, the policy, as long as I've been around, has been as long as you pay something that will keep you off of the delinquent list. 'Cause at the end of the year, I have to certify with the county any delinquent bills. And we determined that a delinquent bill is somebody that hasn't paid in 3 cycles, so 6 months worth.
Okay.
Of a delinquent bill. And then I usually send all those accounts to Deanna, she gets in touch with them. She says, go pay your bill or you're going to end up in the paper and then we're going to place a lien on your property. So then they come in and they usually always, and it's usually the same handful of folks every year that are on that list.
And yeah, we have, accounts ranging from, just a couple $100 to several $1,000s that are behind.
There's one in there, let me see if I can find it real quick, which really bothers me. I know I've seen it earlier, but there's one account in here that's upwards of $7,000-8,000. So it's quite significant. And this is something that as we talk funds with water, sewer and transfer, sanitation, about $140,000 is a lot of money to finance. And so it's one of those things where we kind of got to rein it back in. And it's a little bit harder up here to rein it in, especially on the water end of things, because previous was, hey, you didn't pay. We just went out and shut it off until full payment was made. But it's a little bit different up here because we don't have meter pits. They're inside residents and everything. So that brings up its own issues of shut off.
Right.
But I think at this point, being almost $140,000 out on utilities, it's something that we probably need to talk about, discuss. And I'll turn it over to Elizabeth because she put a lot of this verbiage in here. I gave her the bones. And but I think there's a couple solutions in here, or both of them as a solution. So
Yeah, so, we took a look at some of our neighboring communities have in place, and want to make recommendations that, really fit our community. So some examples, very common for communities to have, relatively short grace periods for payments. And then after, 5 to 10 days, after that grace period has elapsed, the account begins incurring late fees. They can be, range from, small fixed amount, $5, to percentage. And again, John did mention some of the, challenges we would have if we wanted, implementing, the possibility of shutoffs, if some accounts are, continually past due. So based on, familiarity with what other, again, neighboring communities implement as far as minimum payments for past due accounts, John put together a recommendation of for balances under $1,500, a $300 minimum payment per month until the account is brought back up into good status. And for accounts over $1,500, a recommendation of $750 a month until the account is caught up. So yeah, we would really like to, seek your input on the numbers that feel appropriate for our community as far as minimum payments. And if we want to, reinstate, those late charges and penalties for past due accounts.
Chris, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'm all for best practices from other communities and totally trust y'all's experience in the matter. Late charges and penalties seem to be fairly commonplace. Again, y'all lean on y'all for best practices there. So I'm all for getting a hold on it, and think that that's an exorbitant number to be out. I do think though that while I would love to limit that not fun interaction as much as possible on a shut off, there's got to be a point at which we're willing to kind of go down that road. And then I know that I don't know, but I think that if then someone turns it back on themselves, that can be criminal. I believe things of that nature. Just being where at what point are we willing to cross that bridge, and again, super open-minded. Don't want to push something forward that I don't know enough about, but I think we got to rein it in. And then I did have one question. Of this 100 accounts at 140,000 or so dollars, how many of those are delinquent? Are they all delinquent, or are they just past due and some of them are delinquent? I guess what I'm looking for is the context on kind of like the worst bad actors. Are we talking about, 25 addresses, or, half the addresses, or what is, and specifics might be tough, but just a general idea on kind of what that sort of breakout of those 100 accounts looks like. If we've got any just kind of quick information about that.
Are you thinking 30, 60, 90, 120? Is that kind of where you were going with this? Like, who falls into which category?
Well, I just go.
Go ahead, Chris.
Was that question for me or for John, Jim?
Oh, for you, Chris. Sorry.
Yeah. I was just really curious of what the spread of those 100 accounts looked like. And then, and I don't know if it's a days past due or an amount or what that creates kind of like the point at which we think it's time to go shut them off. Again, I don't want to put that uncomfortable situation on our staff more than anybody else would, but what are we thinking is kind of the right point at which to kind of maybe have to have that uncomfortable situation. And so, I wasn't suggesting anything. I'm more kind of posing the question as to learn context and see kind of what we think.
Yeah, like how many of these 100 are past 4 months?
Yeah, just a quick review. I would say close to 2/3
Are past 4 months,
Past 4
past 2
months.
billing cycles?
Yeah.
Okay.
Holy shit.
That's surprising. Wow.
I do remember this, and I do recall why we did this. And for the same reason why the meters are inside the homes, primarily, it's because it can cause greater damage if they're shut off from the outside, because you're gonna have all those pipes will explode during different times of the season. Are a lot of the how do I say this politely? A lot of the comments that have been made over the past 5 years, 6 years, have been that their meters are inaccurate, so therefore they don't know what to actually pay. I don't personally, I don't buy that, because even you paying the bare minimum, you're paying something. And I think they know what their water bills are. Is this a water meter problem, or is this just a delinquent resident problem?
I think this is just a delinquent resident problem.
It's a
that's
delinquent
what-
problem.
And that's what we had talked about.
Because at this point, we've been on EQRs for over a year. And we still have these accounts that just are either not paying or they're way behind.
And kind of going back to what Chris's question was, what percentage of these accounts are commercial or residential?
I would say you're probably 40% are commercial and about 60% are residential. And that's just a quick,
Right.
from what I've went through it. I mean, I could get you more solid numbers, but yeah, I think that's pretty fair. And I tend to agree with Melina that this is a delinquent problem and not a, the water meters, they're coming. And to give you some context of what other systems typically do is my previous employer, once a month, we would go out and we would get the list, and those people were past due 30 days and then into the next month. And we would get our list and we would go out. I'd send all my crews out. We'd shut off on an average 100 people a month. We would charge $50 for the shut off and another $50 for the turn on. Plus they would have to bring their account to zero. Again, that was a lot easier down there because we had meter pits and everything, but I think we really need to come up with a plan and get this back under control, because at this point it's gonna spiral. And I don't know about you guys, but another 140 grand I could definitely use in some of my accounts, and even if you take that 140 and you do 30% of that goes to transfer station, that's going to help close that number off. Are we going to get there? No, but it's another step on not having to bleed so much money. So.
Well, yeah, and the 140 is a function of what we should be charging for the water that we are producing. So, I mean, really, it's sort of its own animal there. Because otherwise, I would assume we're losing money in the cost that it takes to keep our water system up and all the work y'all do for that. So, is there any way to, when the new meter goes in, is that a point at which you're in there anyways? And, we can put this deadline out in front of people that, they know that it's coming or something like that. I didn't know if that would be an inflection point that kind of like helps make the hard conversation easier because you're in there anyways. I don't know if that's an idea.
I see your idea. The only problem that I can foresee on that, Chris, is, I'm doing the meter change out in a 3-year program so that it's not a huge financial hit for the town to buy 700 and some odd meters and get them all installed. So it would be, I think, I mean, some of these numbers that are in front of me, this is years and years of not paying. So I think it just, in my opinion, has to be a broad, hey, this is what we're going to. We'll get them caught back up. It's going to be a little heartache. And I understand that because I dealt with this in other municipality. But at the other end, I don't think the town of Silverton we shouldn't be financing this.
No, absolutely.
It's not fair to everyone else either.
For the longest time, the policy has been, just you pay whatever you can. But unfortunately, it's getting abused. I mean, I can think of several people who will come in and write a check for $75 or a check for $100 to go towards their utility bill. And they've been doing that for years. They'll come in, once every couple of months, write a check for $80. And it's like, okay, well, yes, technically you're making payments enough to keep you off of the delinquent list, but your balance is, $1,000.
Even when they went to the EQR and that as a residential is $275 and they're only paying 75, they're never going to gain. And that's
No.
why I'm proposing, and even my staff recommendation, I mean, that's just a shot across the bow. You know, would love to have input from you three gentlemen and say this is too low or too high, and even comments from the board. But I think we've got to rein this in before it really gets out of control.
So I joined a little bit late, but I think it's important that it gets done in 2026 and doesn't linger in 2027.
Totally agree.
So if there's a way of saying, okay, you have 6 months to clear the debt, we can put you on payment plans. However, if you don't go on a payment plan, you don't choose to do this, after 30 days, we're going to turn off your water. And then there's, my thought is there a situation for a hard case where someone actually qualifies based on, 200% of the federal poverty limit, that they can come in and have some sort of, discussion on an individual basis. If they absolutely have, they have to choose between food and water, that's a hard one.
Well, and I'm glad you said that, Doc, because we've had hardship policies in the past that we've implemented. And this is one of those perfect, I would say, examples of, are these hardship cases, or are these folks that just want to pay the bare minimum so as to scoot by and not actually pay into the system?
No, when I do it for the clinic, they have to bring in their W-2s, they have to bring in their pay stubs,
Right.
and show that it's pretty easy to do, that they qualify based on federal poverty limit tiers. If they can't,
There's also funding through the state of Colorado through the LEAP program. And we've had, I've had several people in town apply for LEAP funding, and then LEAP will balance out their utility bill. And so if somebody is really in a state of hardship like that, then they should be able to apply for funding from the state, and then the state will pay their utility bill.
yeah, I think if there's any way we can help them, if they
Right.
can prove that they sit at a certain, poverty limit that we can decide upon, maybe there's even a state guideline on that. But if you don't fit in, and if we have any way we can help them with the LEAP, we do everything we can for those folks. However, otherwise we tied it up by the end of 2026, and you got 6 months to close these out, or utilities get turned off, and we avoid the rush of the summer, so businesses aren't being hit. But there's got to be a hard line at the end of the year.
Well, I'm glad we're getting a lot of this on the record, because when asked about hardship programs, when asked about how many people are not paying into the system and how much is actually owed, and is it commercial versus residential, and is this a water meter problem, I think every single question that that a resident can ask one of us about our public works is answered right now.
Can I throw this out there? Knowing that this will go into the public and a discussion of everyone in town, does it make sense to strategically make sure the word goes out so that everyone who's paying and understands the circumstance, so rumors aren't milled around, and the people that aren't paying get a little pressure in the public eye that they're not doing their, they're not paying their way?
Sure. I mean, if the direction is to move forward with this, then yeah, we'll have to put it out there that this is the new policy. And either
Can it be framed, though, from the historical sense that there is a disproportionate number of people in town paying for this, and there's some who aren't? Or do we just have to give the straight facts?
I mean, I think the more straightforward, the better. If people have questions, they're welcome to come ask or to call, but You know, I mean, I think that every time we pass a new policy, the policy just needs to be straightforward.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking is, are we allowed to say why we're passing this policy?
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Good,
yeah, that's important, yeah.
very important. I think probably the most important part though is if folks are paying the minimum of 44, whatever it is, dollars every billing cycle, are they going to be able to pay the 300 required to catch up?
Yeah, I think that might be the question that's at the heart of the matter is if these, yeah, proposed minimum payments are realistic and a good fit for Silverton. Or if now is a good time to discuss the lower amount that feels more doable for all members of our community.
Sure. Instead of saying you can pay anything, saying, okay, you have to pay at least this amount, which maybe 300 is too much, maybe 750 is too much.
Well, and that's, so just a little bit of background, how I got to those numbers. I'm going to say, okay, on right now, residential, let's just say it's $250. That's between water, sewer and sanitation. So that $300 and $50 of that is going to the past due balance. That's how I started coming up with, okay, what are those numbers? Because I understand the hardship and everything else, and I completely agree. If somebody, we look at the, the hardship policy, and we deal with that on a case-by-case scenario to get those people caught up. And, is 300 too much? It's 275. But we need to gain some traction rather than, okay, I'll give you $280 and that $5 goes to my past due. That again is going to put us years behind and not get what we're trying to accomplish. And I mean, I'd go back to, I totally agree with Dr. Brown. I'd love to be able to do this in 6 months, but I don't want to be trying to find a water shutoff valve with 6 feet of snow on it in the middle of December. I would say we prolong it to, say, May, try and work through the winter and all that, so that, okay, if you're not caught up or whatever the plan is at that point, then at least I have better access if we got to go more towards the enforcement side of things. And Chris, real quick to answer one of your back questions, if somebody decides to go buy their own valve key and turn it on, if it is eventually shut off or whatever, there is a law and it's called tampering with a utility. And most places have a $300 fine for something like that, because it is it is a utility. And I have had to go through that process in my other employer. And yeah, it sucks, but you get the point across real quick when they got to go in front of a judge. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing I was thinking here is I would like the onus of the, proof of hardship and things like that to not be on us and not be in a, town funded scenario directly if possible. So the state level where they are applying for it, I like that idea a lot. So, I don't know that we need to have our own program. And because then at what point, what are our parameters, and at what point are we just kind of forgiving $140,000? I don't know. I would think that, getting ahead of this as much as we can, especially when money is being made in this town. 40%, I think you said, was commercial. Seems like those should be caught up quickly. And then as things get tighter, things are certainly tougher for people to make payments when the money's not coming through as much. But I guess I just want to make sure that preferably somebody else is, deciding that they are granted this hardship status and some relief, and our community still gets paid. That would be a big hope of mine. So I don't know. Otherwise, I think all the numbers here make a ton of sense, and I'm for moving forward with exactly how you have it here. And if we're looking for any sort of assistance to a hardship or something, hopefully there's that program Melina mentioned that we can just direct them to through the state.
I throw an idea out, just if we know what each individual, whether it's a commercial or resident, owes, and we just say, okay, we set a timeline of 9 months for repayment, and then we can just on an individualized basis say, we need to have a plan for you to catch up in 9 months of all back, due bills. And the only way you can do that is divide that out over that 9 months so that they're held to making those payments. If they don't make those payments, that's where we have to have the discussion of, well, you get shut off early. If they go through like 2 months without making any payments at all, so they're totally ignoring the process, well, you got to shut them off. Don't wait. I would say don't wait through the winter and deal with it next spring. Unless they come unqualified for hardship, and that's a case by case basis. But there's commercial business out there that's making a stance and saying, I'm not going to pay my back bills. Well, you identify them.
Well, and I think if someone is going to make the argument that they can't afford it and that they need assistance, then I am going to direct them to seek that assistance from the state, because it's not, I don't think that it's appropriate for our office to start asking people for W-2s and pay stubs like that. That's not within our scope. And so if somebody is going to make the argument
within our scope, though,
huh?
How do we know that's not within our scope?
I just don't think I don't think that that's appropriate for us to start asking people for their W-2s and pay information. I think if someone is going to make the argument that they need assistance, then we should just direct them to get that assistance from the state.
It's absolutely appropriate in healthcare, and we're not that different. We're a public service. I'm a private business, which makes it even more difficult. But just because we don't want to do it doesn't mean it's not appropriate.
No, but it's not. We shouldn't be retaining that kind of information here. It's not. Again, I think that if they make that argument, then they should seek assistance from LEAP, from the state.
I also don't think that we need to be the ones providing the hardship plan and essentially losing the money.
Well, I'm saying if they apply for the state assistance, then the state can, if the state determines that they are in fact in need of assistance, then they can pay the bill.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm for that. I think if we were to do something in-house, then all of a sudden we're forgiving, bills, and we don't get any money,
Which that's what was done.
Yeah. You're forgiving,
before. That's how we ended up with this system where we allowed people to just pay whatever they could. And now we're in this situation where there are people that have been paying a very minimal amount for a lot of years. And so instead of that, I think that if they qualify for hardship, then they need to do that through the state.
I agree.
Then how do we know that they've actually qualified for hardship? How do we have that guarantee that they've gone off to the state and gone through the process and come back to us with an answer?
If the state rejects them, then we reject them as well, and they need to pay their bill.
Yeah, and we can, if you're not familiar with LEAP, I can send out information on that program so you can see the parameters that the state utilizes for determining eligibility.
And we could probably link that on our town website too.
Definitely.
That way if someone does asked, we can just tell them to go to the town website and they can follow the link to LEAP, and then that way we can make it a little easier for them to find information.
And from a administrative perspective, since there already is this system, state level system in place, to help with hardship for utility bills, yeah, I'd rather not duplicate that process.
That's not necessary.
Okay, so if they don't do that and they don't come up with a solution on their own, we turn off the water.
Well, if the state
That's the outcome.
says you are capable of paying these bills yourself, then they need to come back, they need to set up a payment plan and they need to adhere to it. And if they don't, then yes, we can discuss turning off their water.
Okay, I'd also be interested if there's a precedent on other similar, communities around the state, what their process has been in the past.
Yeah, it's,
Because I know it's very difficult for folks, on an individual basis to go out and sometimes navigate their own process to getting state approval and state funding. And if that becomes a barrier, it's not the solution then.
yeah, what it can say so far is in the research we've done, looking at neighboring communities, regional communities, I have yet to come across an in-house hardship program for utility billing. But not to say that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So far I'm hearing full support for the minimum payments outlined in the staff recommendation. Also a suggestion of more of a timeline based, 9 months to get accounts up to current. So I think that's where we just need to talk through some more and get some clarity on pursuing, specific minimum payments or that timeline focus structure. And so, Jim, if you have any thoughts on that matter, that would be great to hear.
Thank you. I don't have any additional thoughts. I think this is how we got here in the first place. And it was our good intentions way back when. And again, 6 years ago, I was of the understanding that this would eclipse at some point in time and go away, this minimum payment situation. Obviously it hasn't, and we're still here. If everyone isn't paying into the system, then the system doesn't work. And I will continue to repeat that. Minimum payments, clearly not enough. They need to make whatever you guys determine is that proper dollar amount. As far as the hardship, whether it's us doing it or someone else doing it, I personally, I don't see a problem, but I understand if there are issues for having this information. But I guess I'll leave that up to staff. It's not, I guess for us to determine. It would be staff's time and effort. And I think the bottom line is we just have to get these accounts paid up, get this money back into our coffers where we're earning the interest, where we're using this money to reinvest in the community as a whole into the various projects. That's it. I think we can go round and round, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I appreciate that input.
Oh.
Yeah, and I would say from an administrative perspective, implementing, set minimum payments would be easier for us to implement rather than, a timeline based repayment program where we're calculating individual payment amounts for these, 100+ accounts. So yeah, so from, staff, again, administrative perspective, that would be more efficient for us to implement.
But I think doing that, we can keep in the back of our mind to try and get this done within a certain period of time.
Right, the
Certainly.
more ironclad the policy and more that we're able to implement it in a blanket sense,
Yes,
the easier it will be for us to
Yep.
actually
administer.
enforce it, because if we take every single one of these 100 accounts and we do case by case basis on every single one, they're gonna slip through the cracks. People are still not gonna pay. We're not gonna be able to enforce it. It has to be, it has to just be a policy that applies across the board.
I feel that y'all have done, great research into this, and I love the staff recommendations that are here and, would essentially just direct to move forward in that manner. And I like the idea of, if you need assistance, then we're blanketly, again, directing them to the state programs. Because if we offer the assistance and forgive it, then we're going to lose the money. We're not going to get our coffers repaid. So that's, I don't know if we can motion to do that or what's appropriate now, but I think, everything y'all have laid out here seems to be very well, researched and has a good plan for it. And that's what I'd like to see, so we can start moving in the right direction.
Great, yeah. If we have some, building some consensus behind that direction,
We can draft a resolution to pass the policy and then we can bring it to the board, full board.
So based on that, any additional thoughts or conversation, before we're fully directed to pursue that avenue?
Nothing here.
Great. We'll begin drafting that and have a resolution before the full board here in the near future.
Thank you.
Great.
Everyone's gonna really not like Stuart. Stuart's gonna be everyone's worst nightmare.
Well, great. Appreciate all the input today, and any last thoughts or comments before we conclude today's meeting?
Just thank you to everybody.
Sorry, just quick inquiry. That time I was away, was there a totally separate topic that I missed out on, so I can double check everything if need be? I think I stepped away right before during the water discussion.
Okay, yeah, let's see, I think you were absent for part of the on-call.
All right, no, I stepped out at the on-call period.
Okay,
I'm still fine with that, yeah. Okay.
Yep. So just to recap there, received direction to draft those updated on-call policies, and feel comfortable that more than likely, barring very significant winters, that the typically allotted $20,000 budget for Public Works overtime can absorb those costs, but will likely for 2027 recommend increasing by a couple of $1,000s to account for
Just
those.
to make sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good. No other topics are between that and the water.
No.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Great.
All right.
Well, we'll go ahead and conclude our finance committee meeting. It's 11:19. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I'll see you all later.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
Bye.
Good night.